Welcome to Villains with Vaughn, Episode 4. Villains with Vaughn is a true crime podcast dedicated to shining light on some would-be villains that might otherwise escape the public eye, cases that are strange and abnormal, and even discussing local cases that are small but not forgotten. Our fourth case that we present is full of sorrow, lies, and broken hearts as we discuss the murder of Caylee Anthony. May her beautiful soul finally be at peace. A lie with a purpose is one of the worst kind, and the most profitable. Josh Billings. On March 19, 1986, in Warren, Ohio, Caylee Marie Anthony was born. She was the second child of Cindy, a registered nurse, and George, a law enforcement officer. On the outside, theirs appeared to be like any ordinary American family. Caylee began using lies as a security blanket when she was in high school, but lies rarely remain uncovered, and Caylee's were no exception. As graduation steadily approached, Caylee assured her family that she was doing well and was on track to graduate. In truth, however, she had stopped attending her classes toward the end of the year. Neither her parents nor grandparents had any idea until they attended the ceremony, where they learned Caylee was several credits shy of graduating. Later, at age 19, Caylee tried to uphold a new major lie when her family noticed that she was putting on weight. Cindy and George suspected that their daughter was pregnant, but she denied it, claiming to be a virgin. Once again, time caught up with her, and she could no longer deny that she was, in fact, pregnant. After reluctantly telling her parents the truth, she shifted her lie to the identity of the father. Caylee pointed her finger at a variety of men, including her then-fiancé, Jesse Grund, and an ex-boyfriend who had died in an accident. Caylee Anthony was born on August 5, 2005. After the birth, Caylee and Caylee would live with Cindy and George in their Orlando, Florida home. Grund would take up the mantle of father to the baby for a while. He wanted to believe Caylee was his, though part of him knew the timing of her conception made it impossible. This fact would later be confirmed via a DNA test. During the years Caylee lived with her parents, home life would be less than ideal. Cindy would eventually call her daughter out on her competence as a mother. This led to a massive argument that may have been the catalyst for the events that followed. In mid-June 2008, Caylee took Caylee and left her parents' home. Over the next month, Cindy would often call Caylee to check in on her granddaughter. Each time, Caylee would tell her mother that Caylee was out with her babysitter, Zenaida "Zanny" Fernandez-Gonzalez. On July 13, 2008, Cindy and George received a letter saying that their daughter's car had been impounded. George went to retrieve the vehicle and found Caylee's purse, Caylee's toys, and a car seat inside. He also noted an overwhelming stench coming from the trunk, akin to decomposition. It was so bad that he could not drive the car home without having all the windows down. The belongings and smell alarmed Cindy, and she went to bring her daughter home. Caylee had been staying with her boyfriend, Tony Lazzaro, who would later become a key witness in the trial. Back home with her parents, Caylee broke down. She told her mother and her brother Lee that she left Caylee with Zanny in Orlando on June 16th, and the babysitter kidnapped the toddler. This news prompted Cindy to file a report with the Orange County Sheriff's Office on July 15th. Caylee Anthony had been missing for 31 days by the time authorities were notified. Caylee was, of course, questioned by detectives about the disappearance of her daughter. She submitted a signed statement detailing her version of events. While reviewing the statement, the detectives found a number of discrepancies in the woman's story. Small details and timing didn't match, but the biggest issue was with Zanny. No one had ever heard of the babysitter, and with good reason. Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez didn't exist. Caylee's penchant for lying did not stop there, however. She told detectives she worked at Universal Studios, going as far as to take them around the park. It wasn't until they reached what was supposed to be her office that she admitted she never returned to her job there. Casey was arrested on July 16th. The search for Caylee intensified, and Casey's every move leading up to and after the disappearance was scrutinized. Anthony's behavior in the time between leaving her parents' home and the report of her missing daughter was considered highly suspect. She would go out partying and drinking, she acted carefree, and even got a tattoo that said Bella Vita, which means beautiful life in Italian. In the hope that Casey would help lead authorities to her daughter, reality TV bounty hunter Leonard Padilla posted $500,000 bail for the woman. Casey returned home on August 21st. Unfortunately for Padilla, Casey made no effort to help find her little girl. Disappointed and feeling foolish for believing in Casey, Padilla revoked the bond. In interviews, he labeled the woman as a promiscuous narcissist, which further swayed public opinion. Casey had quickly become a media sensation. The world was watching this case closely, and it was widely discussed. Everyone had an opinion, but most leaned toward outrage at Anthony's actions. Just 8 days after release, Casey was back in jail, this time with added charges of forgery and identity theft. The investigation into the disappearance of Caylee Anthony continued. Unfortunately, police would go months with little headway. It wasn't until meter reader Roy Kronk found a suspicious bag that the investigation would take a leap forward. On December 11, 2008, while working in a wooded area not far from the Anthony's home, Roy found a small, white object that he said looked like a human skull. This was actually the second time Roy had seen the object. While working in the area 4 months prior, he saw what appeared to be a skull next to a gray bag. Kronk called the sheriff's office to report it, but they accused him of wasting their time. When he made the report in December, police took the search more seriously. This time, they found the remains of a child in a trash bag. Investigators recovered duct tape which was hanging from hair still attached to the skull, and when they combed the area, they found more bones. On December 19th, the remains were confirmed to belong to Caylee Anthony. The medical examiner concluded her death was a homicide, but the cause was undetermined. In June 2011, 3 years after the disappearance of her daughter, the trial of Caylee Anthony began. Prosecution sought the death penalty for the egregious crime, doing their best to present the evidence and testimony they had. With all of her lying, it was not difficult to paint Casey as a flippant party girl with no regard for anyone but herself, and the evidence they had seemed damning. An internet search was found on the family computer for information about chloroform, for which Cindy took the blame. She could not explain the presence of the chemical in the trunk of her daughter's car, however. The same car that smelled like and tested positive for human decomposition. A hair that matched Caylee's was also found in the trunk of the vehicle. Casey's defense, Jose Baez, and co-attorney Cheney Mason told a completely different story than that of the prosecution. A story that seemed backed by witness statements, including that of boyfriend Tony Lazzaro, saying Casey was a normal, attentive mother right up to the moment Caylee vanished. They said her history of lying did not indicate her guilt, and she was, in fact, a victim. A victim of circumstance, certainly, but more importantly, a victim of abuse. This was a statement from Baez that would shock the court and everyone watching the highly televised trial. In his opening statements, Baez told the court that George Anthony began sexually abusing his daughter at the age of 8. He threw the same accusation at Casey's brother Lee and implied one of them may have been Caylee's true father. This was disproven via DNA tests. Baez also claimed that George was the one responsible for Caylee's death. Under his supervision, the little girl drowned in the family pool on June 16th, and he covered it up. According to Baez, Casey was used to covering up her hurt. George denied all accusations and was never charged with any crime. Prosecution told the court, Caylee was drugged with chloroform and suffocated when her mouth and nose were duct-taped shut. However, as the medical examiner had listed the cause of death as undetermined, it was easy for Casey's defense to counter the claim. Baez accused the prosecution of using fantasy forensics. On June 30th, the defense rested without Casey taking the stand. On July 5th, the jury returned with their verdict, disappointing the world. Caylee Anthony was found not guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated manslaughter, or aggravated child abuse. The jury cited circumstantial evidence as the reason for their decision. Anthony was found guilty of 4 counts of providing law enforcement with false information. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison and a $4,000 fine. 2 of the false information charges were later thrown out in appeals, and Casey received credit for time served and good behavior. Caylee Anthony was released from prison on July 17th, with 3 years and 1 day served. Due to check fraud, she was required to serve 1 year of probation and was billed $200,000 owed to law enforcement in relation to the resources used in the search for Caylee. The public was outraged by the outcome of the trial and likened it to the 1995 trial of O.J. Simpson. However, one positive came from this horror in the form of Caylee's law. Many states passed bills to make it a felony for any parent or legal guardian not to report a missing child. In the years following the trial, Casey has been in and out of the public eye. Between interviews, documentaries, and a handful of lawsuits, Casey maintains her claim that she has no idea how her daughter died. She also says she neither thinks nor cares about what people say about her. The Associated Press described an interview with Casey as revealing, bizarre, contradictory, and raised more questions than answers. Estranged from her family, Casey now lives a quiet and secluded life. Until 2022, she lived and worked with Patrick McKenna, who was the private detective who led the investigation for Casey's defense. Most recently, she has been reported to live alone somewhere in South Florida. This many years later, the death of 2-year-old Caylee Anthony is still widely debated. Her life was cut short before it ever truly began, and it's doubtful that true justice will ever be served for the horrific murder. We here at Villains with Vaughn want to thank you for listening to our podcast and hope that you find each case informative, taking lessons from the darkest moments while finding the silver lining within each tunnel. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and to check back every other Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a brand new episode. Until then, please be safe out there.